I'm Dr. Christy, and this is Climbing Fish Parenting, practical parenting strategies in 20 minutes or less. I'm a psychologist and behavior analyst, and I work with exhausted, overwhelmed parents who feel like they've tried everything and nothing works. If you're listening to this while folding the laundry, hiding in your car, or wishing bedtime would just end already, you're in the right place. Today's topic is why parenting a child who's wired differently is so exhausting, and why it's not your fault. By the end of this episode, you'll understand what's actually draining you and have strategies to protect your own energy so you can keep showing up. Ready to transform your parenting journey? Let's dive in. I want to start by saying something critical. If you're parenting a child who just seems to experience the world differently, maybe they have ADHD, autism, anxiety, sensory sensitivities, or maybe they don't have a diagnosis at all, but you know in your gut that typical parenting strategies don't work for them, and you feel completely depleted, that's not a personal failure. It's not because you're weak or doing it wrong. There are very specific research-backed reasons why this type of parenting is exponentially more exhausting than parenting a child whose brain works in more typical ways. Once you understand what's actually happening, you can stop blaming yourself and start protecting your energy. So let's break down what's draining you and exactly what to do about it. Reason 1. You're providing constant co-regulation. Here's what most parenting advice doesn't tell you. Kids whose brains work in typical ways develop the ability to regulate their own emotions progressively over time with minimal intervention. Your job as a parent is to model regulation, offer some support during big feelings, and gradually step back as their brain matures. But kids who are wired differently, their brains often can't do this independently. Not yet, and sometimes not for years longer than you'd expect. Which means you are functioning as their external regulation system, sometimes dozens of times per day. Picture this. Your 7-year-old gets frustrated with homework. A typical developing 7-year-old might feel frustrated, take a breath, maybe ask for help, and move forward. Your child, their nervous system goes into fight or flight. They can't access the part of their brain that says, this is hard, but I can handle it. So you have to step in and be that for them. You're using your calm voice. You're helping them take deep breaths. You're validating their feelings while also helping them stay regulated enough to continue. You're doing the work their brain can't do yet. Now, multiply that by every transition, every unexpected change, every sensory trigger, every social interaction that didn't go the way they expected. Your nervous system is constantly working overtime to keep theirs online. And here's what's critical to understand. This isn't something you can just teach them to do faster. Their brain's regulatory systems are genuinely developing more slowly or working differently. You're not enabling them by providing this support. You're meeting a legitimate developmental need. But it's exhausting because every time you co-regulate with your child, your own nervous system activates. You're not just observing their distress, you're absorbing it, processing it, and managing it for them while simultaneously trying to stay calm yourself. The fix? You need to actively restore your own nervous system between these co-regulation moments. That might look like stepping outside for 2 minutes of fresh air after a meltdown, taking 3 deep belly breaths before you respond to the next crisis, putting your hand on your heart and reminding yourself, I'm safe. This is hard, but I'm okay. You can't pour from an empty cup, and if you're constantly co-regulating without ever refilling yourself, you will burn out. I'm going to talk more about some of these strategies in my newsletter this week. There's a specific insight about co-regulation that I think will really land for you, so make sure you're subscribed. Reason 2, you're making hundreds more decisions. Everyday parenting any child requires decision-making, but parenting a child who's wired differently, you're making an exponentially higher number of decisions every single day, and the stakes often feel higher. Here's what I mean. You're thinking, What should we have for breakfast that won't trigger a sensory meltdown, has enough protein to help with focus and medication effectiveness, can be prepared in under 10 minutes because transitions are hard in the morning, and is something my child will actually eat given that they've recently decided they hate the texture of scrambled eggs? Every single decision has layers. Should we go to the birthday party, or will the noise and chaos lead to a 3-hour meltdown afterward? Should I push them to finish their homework now, or is their nervous system too dysregulated and will just end up in a battle? Do I let them wear shorts in January because the seam on their pants is unbearable, or do I fight that battle and risk starting the day with everyone already defeated? These aren't simple decisions. Each one requires you to weigh sensory needs, emotional capacity, long-term skill building, short-term survival, and about 15 other factors. And because kids who are wired differently often have unpredictable responses to things that worked yesterday, you can't create a system and just coast. You're constantly adapting, troubleshooting, and recalculating. Decision fatigue is real. Research shows that the more decisions we make, the worse our decision-making becomes, and the more depleted we feel. And you're making hundreds more decisions than parents whose kids' brains work in more typical ways. The fix? Reduce unnecessary decisions wherever possible. Create default routines for things that don't actually matter. Same breakfast option Monday through Friday. Same outfit formula. If they'll only wear soft pants and tagless shirts, buy 7 of them and be done with it. Eliminate the decisions that don't truly impact your child's well-being or development. Automate what you can. Grocery pickup. Medication reminders on your phone. A visual schedule on the wall so you're not verbally directing every single transition. And here's a big one. Let go of decisions that only matter because of what other people might think. If your child is happy wearing rain boots in July, who cares? If they eat chicken nuggets for every meal for a month, they will survive. Conserve your decision-making energy for the choices that truly matter. Reason number 3. You're constantly translating between two worlds. Here's something people don't talk about enough. When you're parenting a child who experiences the world differently, you're constantly acting as a translator between your child's reality and a world that wasn't designed for them. Your child experiences the world in their own way. What feels like minor background noise to most people might be physically overwhelming to your child with sensory sensitivities. What seems like a simple social interaction to other kids might be an unsolvable puzzle to your child who processes social cues differently. What looks like an easy task to a teacher might require executive functioning skills your child genuinely doesn't have yet. But the world doesn't automatically adjust, so you have to be the buffer. You're explaining to the teacher why your child needs to stand during lessons. You're advocating to family members why your child can't just try the food at Thanksgiving. You're fielding judgmental looks at the grocery store when your child has a meltdown over the fluorescent lights. You're also translating in the other direction, helping your child understand why the world works the way it does, even when it doesn't make sense to their brain. Why they can't wear pajamas to school even though they're more comfortable. Why they have to wait their turn even though waiting feels impossible. Why people say things they don't literally mean. This constant translation work is invisible to most people, but it's happening all day long. And it's exhausting. The fix? First, acknowledge that this is real work you're doing. You're not being overprotective or making excuses. You're providing necessary support and advocacy for a child whose brain works differently. Second, build your team. Find the people who get it. Whether that's other parents whose kids are wired differently, therapists who understand your child's specific challenges, or teachers who actually get what your child needs. When you have people who already speak your child's language, you don't have to translate as much. And third, practice radical acceptance of what you can't change. You can't make the world work perfectly for your child overnight. You can't force other people to understand. What you can do is focus your energy on the battles that truly matter and let go of trying to make everyone else see what you see. Reason number 4, you're living with chronic uncertainty. Parenting always involves some level of uncertainty, but parenting a child who's wired differently often means living with a level of unpredictability that most parents never experience. You don't know if today will be a good day or a hard day, and sometimes you don't know until you're already in it. That strategy that worked yesterday might not work today. The food they loved last week is suddenly unbearable. The friend they played with happily for months is now a source of anxiety. And the long-term uncertainty, that's even harder. You don't know if your child will grow out of certain struggles or if these will be lifelong patterns. You don't know if they'll be able to navigate school independently, hold down a job someday, have meaningful friendships. You're parenting without a roadmap, and that's terrifying. This chronic uncertainty keeps your nervous system in a low-level state of activation. You're always a little bit braced for the next crisis. You're always running through contingency plans in the back of your mind. You can never fully relax. The fix? This one is hard because you can't eliminate the uncertainty. It's part of the reality of parenting a child whose brain works differently. But what you can do is work on building your tolerance for uncertainty. That might mean therapy for yourself, specifically approaches like acceptance and commitment therapy that help you hold difficult feelings without needing to fix or change them. It might mean practicing mindfulness so you can stay present in this moment rather than catastrophizing about the future. It also means finding small pockets of predictability where you can. Create rituals that are consistent. Protect routines that help your child feel secure. Build in buffer time so unexpected challenges don't derail your entire day. And give yourself permission to grieve. It's okay to feel sad or angry or scared about the uncertainty. Those feelings don't mean you love your child any less. They mean you're human. Reason 5. You're doing it with less support. Here's a painful truth. Parents of kids who are wired differently often have less support than other parents, precisely when they need more. Maybe family members don't understand why your child needs things done differently and think you just need to be stricter. Maybe friends stopped inviting you to things because your child's behavior is so unpredictable. Maybe you can't find a babysitter who can handle your child's needs, so you haven't had a break in months or years. Maybe you're exhausted from advocating, fighting for services at school, arguing with insurance companies, educating every new professional you encounter. You're doing the work of parenting plus the work of case manager, advocate, educator, and therapist. And often, you're doing it while other people judge you. They see your child's meltdown and assume you're permissive. They see the accommodations you make and think you're enabling. They don't see the 1,000 invisible things you do every day to help your child function in a world that wasn't built for them. Second, find your people. Online communities of parents raising kids who are wired differently can be a lifeline when you feel alone. Support groups, whether virtual or in person, connect you with people who don't need the translation. They already get it. And third, let go of relationships that drain you. If someone consistently judges your parenting or dismisses your child's needs, you don't owe them access to your life. Protect your energy fiercely. Reason number 6, the emotional labor is invisible. Here's what I need you to know. Most of the hardest work you do is completely invisible to everyone around you. They don't see you lying awake at night running through strategies for tomorrow. They don't see the mental load of tracking medication effects, therapy appointments, IEP deadlines, sensory triggers, and emotional patterns. They don't see you biting your tongue when someone suggests your child just needs more discipline. They don't see you absorbing your child's emotional dysregulation into your own body and working to process it so you can stay calm. They don't see the grief that bubbles up at unexpected moments when you see other kids doing things easily that your child struggles with. They see the meltdown. They don't see the 2 hours of careful scaffolding you did to prevent a worse one. They see you giving in to your child. They don't see that you're picking your battles because you only have so much capacity and you've already fought 12 battles today. This invisible labor is exhausting in its own right, but it's made worse by the fact that no one acknowledges it. You don't get credit for the crises you prevented, only criticism for the ones you couldn't. The fix? Start acknowledging it yourself. At the end of each day, take 60 seconds to mentally list the invisible work you did. I co-regulated through 3 transitions. I adjusted the morning routine when I saw dysregulation building. I advocated with the teacher. I researched new sensory tools. You deserve to see your own effort, even if no one else does. And if you have a partner, make the invisible visible. Don't assume they know everything you're managing. Share the mental load explicitly, not to complain, but to help them understand the full scope of what you're carrying so they can support you better. Reason number 7, you're running a marathon, not a sprint. Here's the final piece, and it's critical. Parenting a child who's wired differently is not a short-term challenge you power through and then it's over. It's a marathon. The intensity might shift over time, but the need for your support, advocacy, and co-regulation doesn't just disappear at age 8 or 12 or even 18. And our culture sets you up to fail because it treats parenting like a sprint. Just get through the baby years. Just survive the toddler tantrums. There's always this implicit promise that it gets easier soon. But for you, it might not. Or it might get easier in some ways and harder in others. Your child's needs evolve, but they don't disappear. And if you approach this like a sprint, pushing through on willpower and adrenaline, telling yourself you just need to survive until some future point when it will magically get easier, you will burn out, guaranteed. The fix? You have to pace yourself like a marathon runner. That means rest isn't optional. It's strategic. It means you can't give 100% all the time. Some days you're at 60%, and that has to be okay. It means building sustainability into your life. What can you maintain long term? What support systems do you need in place, not just for this month, but for the next 5 years? And it means letting go of the idea that you're supposed to do this perfectly. Marathon runners don't sprint the whole way. They pace. They walk sometimes. They take water breaks, and they still cross the finish line. You're allowed to pace yourself. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to be imperfect and still be exactly the parent your child needs. All right, that's it for today. Remember, if you're exhausted from parenting your child who's wired differently, it's not because you're weak or failing. It's because you're providing constant co-regulation, making hundreds more decisions every day, translating between 2 worlds, living with chronic uncertainty, doing it with less support, carrying invisible emotional labor, and running a marathon that our culture treats like a sprint. The fix? Actively restore your nervous system between co-regulation moments. Reduce unnecessary decisions. Build your team of people who get it. Practice tolerating uncertainty. Ask for specific help. Acknowledge your invisible labor. And pace yourself like this is a marathon, because it is. If this was helpful, hit subscribe so next week's episode shows up automatically. Head to my website at www.climbingfishparenting.com and sign up for my free frustration tolerance scripts and practice guide. Word-for-word scripts for every age, plus low-stakes activities to build the skill. Plus, there's something in this week's newsletter about co-regulation that I didn't cover in this episode, a research finding that I think will really validate what you're experiencing. That strategy I just gave you, it's the whole climbing fish philosophy in action. There's a quote, "Everybody's a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid." Your kid isn't broken. Your parenting isn't broken. Sometimes we're just asking our fish to climb trees. That's what we fix here. I'm Dr. Christy, and I'll see you next week.